So, Lone Rider here, and I just wanted to pose a question that I'm kind of puzzled by. How come there are no bikes in the apocalypse? Seriously. You look at any fictional presentation of a big world-changing, or world-ending, however you want to consider it, disaster. Whether it's Godzilla coming to pick up a bus and stomp it back down, whether it's the aliens in Independence Day coming to blow up big landmarks, whether it's a zombie outbreak or the rise of the Planet of the Apes, it seems that nobody's riding a bike. This seems really strange. Now, maybe I'm a little biased being a cyclist, but one of the things I've noticed is that in real-life disasters, when the roads are clogged with traffic, blocked with debris like down power lines and fallen tree limbs, or in some cases actual fallen trees, or in cases where fuel is scarce because either power outages have shut down the gas stations, they actually can't run their pumps to pump gas, or because they've run out of gas, as happened in some places during Hurricane Sandy some years ago here in New Jersey. I found that rather than wait in line for 3 hours to get to the one gas station that was open, and hopefully, if I was lucky, still have gas when I got there, I just rode my bike for a lot of local trips. I wouldn't be able to get out of town with the car anyway because most of the roads were blocked in such a way that you couldn't get through with the car, but I could get out of town on my bike. And that's what I did, in fact, after not only Hurricane Sandy, but in the aftermath of other storms, is I went out there on my bike. At the time, I think it was just a rigid mountain bike with like street tires, fairly wide, like 1.5, 1.75, but, not like big, wide mountain bike tires. And just kind of rode around and checked it out and saw which areas had power and which didn't, and where, was the bridge over the river flooded or not, and, which ways out of town were accessible. And I found out that there was only one way out of town by car, which saved me the trouble of trying to get, and when I came to places, by the way, that I wouldn't have been able to get through with my car, I picked the bike up, put it over my shoulder, and climbed over to down tree limbs. If there was a power line, I didn't want to go near that because of safety concerns, but I could go around it, where you might not be able, again, and this doesn't mean, by the way, riding across somebody's lawn like an a-hole. It simply means, pick up your bike and walk around it. And surprise, that's one of the advantages of a vehicle that's really, really small and lightweight, is that a lot of times you can ride around obstacles. If it's not possible to do so, you could just pick up the thing and carry it over or around them. And, I mean, seriously. And the same thing would be true in a disaster scenario. I mean, picture this, right? For those who saw the original movie Independence Day, which came out in the 90s, you remember those scenes where everybody's sitting stuck in traffic waiting for the big alien blaster to let loose and kill everybody and send the kingdom come? Now, what was missing from this picture that would be present in any real-life scenario like that? All the people on bicycles who would be riding past the jablones stuck in their cars and getting out of Dodge way before the alien blaster let loose and killed everyone. Who would you rather be? The jabron stuck in his car trying to call his psychiatrist who's up in the Hamptons because he's having a freak out, because he knows he's going to die, because he's stuck in traffic, because he's sitting in his car like a dumb jabron, or the guy on the bike riding past all that crap, right? Now, I could see in later stages, if there's panic, if there's more of a social breakdown, and things like looting, for example, you might be concerned if you're on your bike, somebody may, let's say, haul you off your bike in order to steal it and or your supplies, right? But we weren't at that stage. We were at the stage in this film, this fictional presentation, where people were just trying to get out of town as quick as they could. And for some reason, most of them just figured, I'll go and I'll sit in my car. I guess we've been so conditioned to that as a society. I'll go and I'll sit in my car. You know what happened to me one time? It was after a thunderstorm, and I was riding home from a nearby town on my bike. And there was a tree limb that fell down in the middle of the street. It blocked about 2/3 of it. Now, people could have gone all the way out to the other side over the double yellow line to go around it, but there were some cars coming, and I think people also didn't want to go, get caught on the wrong side and get hit before they could get back over. So there was a line of about 8 or 9 or 10 cars just sitting there. And the funny thing, and I rode up on my bike. Of course, I'm out to the side, so I just went past them. And I got to the tree limb, and I dismounted, and I walked around it. And I was all set to remount on my bike and continue on my way when I realized that nobody had still gotten out of any of the cars to move the tree limb. They were all going to sit there till Kingdom Come. It's bad enough that nobody tried to move it. They weren't even doing anything, like going around it, doing that. They were just sitting there waiting for somebody to come and move it for them. And they would have sat there until, the cows came home. So I leaned my bike up against the tree. I got out into the street. I grabbed the tree limb, which was very big, and I heaved and I hoed and I pulled it, and I dragged it off the street, most of the way off the street anyway. It was very heavy. Frankly, I shouldn't have done that because I probably could have busted my back. But this was in like 08 or something. It was a little slimmer and in better shape. Anyway, the point is, as soon as I dragged the tree limb off the street, what happened? The cars put themselves in gear and went on their way. Not only did nobody get out and say thank you, but when they saw me dragging the tree limb, nobody got out of their car and offered to maybe help drag the tree limb. And the funny part is, because I was on a bicycle, I could have just gone on my way, but I said, here, there's this hazard in the street. Let me see if I can help move it. But it's like nobody in their car thought that. They would have sat there passively like sheep until gosh knows how long. And so it's not just a fictional phenomenon. We do see shades of this or aspects of this in real life. And I'm not sure this is even really a car versus bike thing. I think there were some people who were just really, really, I don't know, passive, apathetic, can't be bothered, think someone else will do it, think that maybe they think actually using their hands to do something is beneath them. I honestly don't know. But there are people who, if nobody's around to help them, they will just sit down and die, literally. Or sit down and wait to die, like the people stuck in their cars in the movie Independence Day. And the funny thing is, again, you already are seeing reflections of this in real life with the incident that I portrayed about just mentioned about the people stuck in the car by a small town tree limb. And I could see if it was one car with maybe an elderly person in it, and they were like, I don't know if I want to get out. But first of all, it's not a bad neighborhood. It's a suburban neighborhood. Secondly, the weather was, it wasn't like it was pouring or anything. The sky had cleared. There had been a thunder shower, but it had passed. And I could see one car with an elderly or infirm individual. The person may not want to get out, but 10 cars with young, healthy, middle-aged people in them, and not one of them could get out there and help me bust my up moving a tree branch. And the funny thing is, earlier in the day, during the thunderstorm, when I was in New Providence, some guy, the nearby town, his Beamer got stuck when a stream flooded during the thunder and hailstorm, and the water ran across the road. It had been going under the road in a bridge, but it came up, went across the road. The water was about almost up to the knees, and it was just enough. The car got stuck. So I went in there, I got behind the car, and I pushed it out. The guy was in there steering, and I pushed the car, and but my shoes were all wet. They dried. I did the old, stuff with newspaper, put them on the radiator trick when I got home. But the point is, I had helped this person with the car that was stranded, getting soaked from like the knees down. And then I got back on my bike and I was riding home. And then I had to move this tree. Well, I didn't have to move the tree branch, but I would have felt like a jerk if I just left it there. The thing is, again, nobody, like if I hadn't come along or somebody else hadn't come along, what would these people have done? Sat there in their cars until it got dark? I mean, yeah, strange. But the point is, we see that in films, and we see that reflected in the choice when it becomes, sit passively in your car and die when the big alien blaster lets loose, or get on a bike and escape, you may not be able to carry all your worldly goods with you the way you could in a car. Maybe you can, whatever you can fit in a backpack, and maybe like racks on your bike. Maybe strapped to the frame, whatever. That's it. But that's enough for most things, and at least you'll be alive. You'll get out of there. You may not be able to carry your Xbox with you. Maybe just some spare change of clothes, a family album, and some important stuff, survival tools. But you know what? You'll be able to get out of there with your most important commodity, your life. So that's the ironic part, right? It's like, I want to be able to carry all my shit with me, so I'm gonna take the minivan, yeah. And of course, you and all your shit get blown up by the aliens, excuse my language, while the guy on the bicycle is riding off down the street. And the funny thing is, they did have a bicycle on Independence Day. Jeff Goldblum's character is seen riding I think a green mountain bike to work, probably because he was supposed to be this like sort of hippie, environmental person. But when it came time to actually show what would happen with bicycles in a real life apocalypse, bikes are nowhere to be found. And I'm not talking, by the way, about people who might have been in their car and gone home and gotten on their bike because they know it's more efficient and quicker and they'll be able to get out past the traffic jam hordes before the disaster hits. I'm talking about the people, I am talking about them in some ways, but more I'm talking about the people who already would be out on bike. If you've never been to New York City, there's a lot of people riding their bikes, either to and from work or to and from the store, or they're bike couriers or delivery people. Now, if you were a guy riding home from work on your bike and a disaster hit, would you go home and get in your car and be like, I want to sit here in traffic and die with everybody else? Or would you, you might go home to get your belongings or, maybe, anything else that was important to you or that you needed. But the point is that, would you trade that maneuverable bike, which will enable you to get out of town before the disaster hits, for something that's slow and cumbersome and liable to get your ass killed? Probably not. And all those people on bikes, they would be able to get past the traffic. And so what the visual at Independence Day should have really looked like is a bunch of people sitting in their cars with hordes of bikers streaming past them to escape. Yeah, literally. But we never saw it. And we don't see it in any of these other disaster movies. And it is kind of funny. And I got to wonder why. We don't even see it in a post-disaster world. Like, it's one thing, movies that actually show the disaster, okay, I guess they're pretending bikes don't exist. But what about after the disaster where, fuel stockpiles are scarce? And gasoline, by the way, unless it's in an airtight container or gets additives added to it, really spoils right quick. In the general scheme of things, you wouldn't have people 5 years after a world-changing disaster still finding usable gasoline stockpiles. It's just not going to happen. So how about wouldn't you have people riding bikes? Now, I could see maybe they don't want to show a guy riding a bike for long distances. They think it would be boring. But what do you think would be more likely, right? People would either be walking, riding animals like donkeys or horses, or they would be riding bicycles. They would not be driving around in weaponized sports cars and Trans Ams and Humvees, counting on their ability to get salvage stockpiles. Now, you could say a bicycle does have things that could break down on it, things that have to be maintained. Yes, but it needs the same fuel you do, food, and that's it. And in that sense, plus you could, if you're camping in an abandoned building as you're traveling through the wasteland, you could haul the bike up, take it inside with you. If you're camping in a tree to avoid wild animals on the ground, zombie dogs, whatever, you could tie a rope to it and haul it up with you, or throw it over your shoulder and haul it up with you. Again, if you come to obstacles in your travels, you can go around them. Roads in a disaster scenario are probably going to be littered with not only debris from buildings and down poles and things like that, but also wrecked cars, which may be impossible to move. You could try and drive around them, or hope that you don't come to a collapsed overpass where you have to climb down or something like that, and abandon your nice car that you spent years, fixing up and finding stockpiled fuel for it, which shouldn't exist, but whatever. Or that shouldn't work at all, because if the disaster was nuclear, well, a lot of cars have chips and stuff, and so unless you have some scenario where the car was in an underground parking garage and potentially shielded from the electromagnetic pulse, that car, any car built after a certain time in the past, when they started integrating more electronics, shouldn't really work, period. But the point is, the bicycles would, right? And the bicycles would be much more practical. If you wanted to still show the hero driving some kind of motorized contraption, because it's, it looks badass, whatever. Although I think a guy on a bike with a sawed-off shotgun riding through the wasteland, fending off vagrants and zombies, is pretty badass. I mean, a sawed-off shotgun, frankly, makes anyone look badass, even a, nerdy cyclist in a Primal Wear jersey. So, that's neither here nor there. But I honestly don't know whether it's just a style thing. Cyclists wouldn't look cool, so we don't want to show the hero on a bike, or whether, But okay, even if you don't want to show the hero on a bike, what about people in the background, extras, other people in towns that he encounters, just showing bikes propped up against the wall by a tavern, something like that? Nothing. There are no cyclists in the apocalypse. And I honestly think the reason is that if people saw how useful a bike would be after a real-life disaster, let me put it this way. If people saw how useful a bike would be after a movie disaster, a fictional disaster, they might realize that a bike would be useful after a real-life disaster too, again, like a hurricane or something. And not only that, if it's useful after a disaster, it's probably useful during normal times too, right? I mean, think about it. If you can ride your bike to the store when it's impossible to get through in a car, then you could probably do it on a regular day too, couldn't you? And save money and save gas and get outside and turn a mundane chore into something, entertaining and that gives you exercise and gets you, outdoors, enjoying yourself. Yes, all of these things. I honestly think the reason there are no bikes in the apocalypse, it might be that, cyclists being culturally marginalized, people just don't think of it or are afraid to show it because they think it'll look not cool. But I honestly think it's because if they showed people using bikes in a fictional disaster, more people might realize how useful cycling is and start riding in their daily lives, even if it's only to the town library or the local grocery store. And next thing you know, cycling is taking off, and you can't have that because, cycling is less regulated than car driving. It gives the government less control and regulation over people, and it gives the businesses less way to make money off them, right? I honestly think if cycling was as regulated as cars were by the government, and if cycling was as useful to businesses to make money off of people as the car industry is and the automotive industry, I honestly think everybody and their brother would encourage cycling if there was a way to make more money off it and there was a way to use it to control people. But there's not, so they don't, right? And I'm not sure how much of this has to do with people just don't like cyclists or people just don't like cycling. I honestly think it has to do with the positive attributes of cycling that people find unsettling. It's less controlled, it's less regulated, it's free essentially once you have the bike and the equipment, and gosh, we can't have that, right? We got to control people. We gotta make money off them. We gotta charge them through the nose. Sell them that, roadside assistance plans. Sell them that service plan. Sell them that gasoline, the price of which is largely composed of state, federal, and local taxes. The same state, federal, and local governments that are always bitching and moaning about greedy oil companies, but that's another thing. But yeah, I mean, seriously, if there was a way to make as much money off people and, slap a price tag on it and tax them and regulate them by encouraging them to bicycle, I think we'd see people being encouraged to bicycle, but we don't, so they don't. But anyway, there's no bikes in the apocalypse, and I think that's not only pretty damn unrealistic, I think that's pretty damn sad. So, Lone Rider out, and here's wishing that they do an end of the world movie where people on bikes kick butt. Rock on, ride on, stay safe. Lone Rider out.